It's clearly an understatement to say that evidence is very important. Without it, a case cannot progress. The evidence begins with the investigators. They gather evidence. And the partnership between prosecutors and investigators is incredibly important.
We work proactively with our law enforcement investigators. In fact, one of the cases I got when I received it, the undercover hadn't been into the clinic in several months, and so it had been in another prosecutor's office in a federal and local office prior to getting to me. When I got it, there had been no undercover visits for a long time, and so I convinced the detective he needed to go back in there and start doing undercover visits again, which he did. And it was extremely beneficial from an evidentiary point of view, to go forward and prove our case. It also led us to all kinds of other evidence that then I could work with him on a daily basis and look at what he's uncovered and then give him ideas on directions to go for purposes of our prosecution. Also, when we're preparing for trial, we need our investigators to be communicating with witnesses and following them, serving them. They've been in the clinic a lot of times, so a lot of the folks that were in there that didn't know they were undercover, when they learn that they were the undercover in there, they actually will feel more comfortable talking to them, surprisingly. So it's really very important. And these kinds of cases are really, they should be proactive. And when I say proactive, I mean the prosecution and the law enforcement working together. They should be proactive investigations from the beginning.
Since the evidence needed for user and trafficker cases is very similar to illicit drug cases, we're going to focus this segment on doctor cases. The types of doctor cases have changed. As the prescription drug abuse problem exploded, pill mills were everywhere. Many doctors would accept cash only and churn out prescriptions with little or no patient examination. The lines would be out the door, and people would drive from hours away simply to get their prescriptions. That has mostly changed.
There's 2 points I want to make with legitimately and properly. What we saw in our pill mills is, in every single one of them that we were prosecuting, and we continue to prosecute them, they all hold themselves out to be legitimate medical clinics, and they follow every regulatory requirement. So they follow all the rules from the DOH, Department of Health. They follow all the rules from, and this is for any state, they follow every regulatory and administrative requirement. So they're licensed, they have all their licenses on the walls, they have occupational licenses, they keep all the books that they're required to keep through the states that they're located in, so that when somebody walks in and does an inspection, it looks legitimate. Where they fail to follow the law is really in the medicine, because the analogy I like to give is the clinics themselves are like a gun. You have this gun, it's very nice and shiny and it's all intact, and it doesn't work unless you have the bullets, and I liken the bullets to the doctors. So really it becomes illegal when you're looking at the doctors themselves, because the medicine is not justified and the doctors are prescribing in bad faith. And the owners who run these clinics, and it looks like they're legitimate from the outside, are doing so in order to hide the illegal activity that's happening by the prescribing practices of the doctors.
Just like a street drug case, in a doctor case, the user or a trafficker will often lead to the person or persons running the actual operation.
Law enforcement focuses on any crime that is presented to them. It's, you say going after, it's who crosses the radar. And what I mean by that is they don't open a phone book and say, here's Dr. So-and-so, I'm going to go after him today. What they start to see are overdose deaths, and they'll see the same doctor's name on prescription bottles at the scene, or a doctor's name surfaces in a variety of different ways. They hear it from informants. Where did you get your pills? Who are the drug seekers going to? So when flags start raising on a particular physician or a particular clinic or a particular area. That's what law enforcement focuses on.
After an investigator reads Miranda warnings to a suspect, the investigator can begin asking questions as the person is giving a statement. You can often find out in this manner who prescribed the pills, why they were prescribed, and what a doctor actually said to the patient. Questions like, Dr. So-and-so prescribed the pills. What was that appointment like? Did the doctor ask you lots of questions? Was there a physical examination? These type of questions can lead an investigator to a doctor who is illegally prescribing pills. A relatively new tool to help stop prescription drug abuse can also help law enforcement and prosecutors. It is the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program, or PDMP. These PDMPs vary by state, but usually track a patient by what drugs they receive, who prescribes them, and which pharmacies fill them. It can help spot a doctor shopper, someone who is going to multiple doctors to get pills.
With a prescription monitoring program, if a physician is actually accessing the program, it's a wonderful tool to identify, actually early on, a patient who is trying to manipulate the system and see multiple physicians, or, to, acquire, is the best word, acquire the drugs from a variety of legitimate sources. If the monitoring system is used, again, it will identify them early on, so that restricts that access. So a physician who is appropriately using the system will not prescribe to someone that's already received it in the last week or the last 10 days, or they're receiving it from a secondary source.
The systems can also help spot doctors who prescribe lots of medications, but the systems have their drawbacks. They're only as good as the information in them. So if physicians and pharmacists are not accessing the system, nor updating the system, they don't always help law enforcement. Then there are the requirements about who can access the systems. Each state controls who has access to the database and what law enforcement and prosecutors need in order to access the database. An officer just can't go fishing in the databases. Probable cause is necessary. No matter what, they can be a good place to start when looking into a doctor.
The first thing I would do probably is go to the PDMP and run the doctor and see what they're prescribing, and see what controlled medications they're prescribing. If they're prescribing the usual cocktails or somewhat close to the usual cocktails of oxycodone and Xanax or Valium and some kind of a muscle relaxant, then that would be my first clue. I would then try and get an undercover officer to go in there and take a look. The other thing I might do is pull all their administrative reports that have been filed for the clinic, just to get a better idea about what they're doing. I would look at the owners and see where they're from, what their background is, what other kinds of businesses they've had. Because very often the owners have never been in the medical field. They just come and they're businessmen, and this is a business. And then I'd also look closely at the doctors. A lot of the doctors are not local. A lot of them are not certified and board certified in pain medication or anesthesiology. They come from other backgrounds like pathology, gynecology, gastroenterology, backgrounds that really have nothing to do with pain management. So those are the types of places that I would start and do a rough background of all of those individuals.
Don't forget to find the experts to teach you what you need to know to prove your case. If the investigators and prosecutors don't have the requisite skill set or medical training or knowledge, there are people in the health industry, in the medical industry, that do have those skills and are willing and able to help.
We had to pull medical records. We had to learn the medicine involved. So all of it was new and novel and a huge learning curve for us. I think now I would say knowing how to get patient files, I didn't really know at the time. I had to stumble through that. how to read patient files. I had to stumble through that as well. I had to determine myself as a non-expert, using experts, to determine whether or not these medications were medically necessary. You had to pick and choose what doctors were actually trying to do the right thing versus not. So there was a whole lot of thought process that went into prosecuting these cases.
Prosecutors also need to know how to read and understand a prescription. Knowing the types of pills, strengths, and quantities doctors usually prescribe can help you spot when something just isn't right. Remember, there are investigators who have lots of experience in this area and can help. Working together as a team can make things better for everyone.